Hello students. In previous lecture we have learnt about the object complement and we have also seen their types, but in detail we will see in this lecture. Okay, so come we will start. So first of all we will see about the direct and indirect object and their definitions and their examples. Okay, so look here. An object in English is a part of a predicate of a sentence that receives the action of an action verb. It is something or somebody that the action is acted upon the directly or indirectly. There are two types of that. One is direct and other is indirect object. Now we will learn about what is the direct object. A direct object is someone or something that receives an action directly, asks what or whom to the verb to find out the direct object of a sentence. For example, John is writing a script for a movie. So he is writing the script. A script is a direct object. Next example, he bumped his head into the wall. His head is a direct object. Third example, you should never hit a woman. A woman is a direct object. Are you clear? Okay. So next we will learn about what is an indirect object. The definition of an indirect object. An indirect object is a noun or a pronoun that receives the direct object in a sentence, asking to whom or for whom gets the indirect object of a sentence. First example of that, he gifted me a book on my last birthday. He gifted me means the other persons come over here. A book on my last birthday. So me is a indirect object. Next example, I will tell you my story soon. You is an indirect object. My student sent me an emotional message. Me is a next person. So me is an indirect object. After that, see here, I have given you the table so that you can get it easily. Direct versus indirect means it is the table like distinguish. You get the distinguish between the same type, direct versus indirect object. Okay. So see, in the direct object, a noun or a pronoun receiving the action. In indirect object, a noun or a pronoun that receives the direct object. See the difference between here. A noun or a pronoun receiving the action, but in indirect, a noun or the pronoun that receives the direct object. It's done directly on the action, but over here it reflects on the direct object. Okay. Next point, does not depend on the indirect object. Direct object does not depends on the indirect object, but in indirect object the depends on the direct object. Indirect object depends on the direct object. What is there? See over here, direct object is not depend on the indirect object, but in indirect object depends on the direct object. Are you clear? So third point, indirect object. Direct object are preceded by the verb Whereas in indirect object are usually preceded by a preposition. Okay. So next, there are identification of the object, which I have already told you. There are three type of object. One is direct, next is indirect, and next other is object of preposition. What I have told in object, they receives the action of the verb. Indirect involves something being done to something else indirectly. In preposition, object of the preposition occurs after a preposition. For example of direct, John kicked the ball. The ball. Indirect, Joshua built Emma a fence. Emma is in indirect. The fisherman falls over the rail. Over. Next. Some example is given to you. First is the teacher gave Anil a pencil. The teacher is the subject over here. I have shown you in the table so that you can understand it very clearly. Look here. First is the teacher gave Anil a pencil. The teacher is a subject. Gave is a verb. Anil is a indirect. And a pencil is a direct. After that, second, my grandma told me a story. In this, my grandma is a subject, told is a verb, me is an indirect object, and a story is a direct object. Third example, the king gave the soldier his swords. The king is a subject, gave is a verb, indirect object is the soldier is an indirect object, and his swords is a direct object. More example, my father gave me a pencil or a new book. My father is a subject, gave is a verb, me is an indirect object, a new book or a pencil is a direct object. Next example, she wrote to her grandmother a letter. She is a subject, wrote is a verb, to her grandmother is an indirect object, and a letter is a direct object. Other example, the woman baked for her daughter a cake. The woman is a subject, baked is a verb, for her daughter is an indirect object, and a cake is an direct object. So, I think that the video is clear to you and you have understood the object, complement, and their types very